Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, welcome to the Daily Tottenham Podcast, and we are talking Spurs Manchester City, a midweek fixture that didn't quite deliver on the promise that this one has in recent years. Manchester City have bounced back from a difficult week with a gritty 1-0 victory over Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Erling Haaland's early goal proved decisive as Pep Guardiola's side climbed back into the Premier League's top four. City dominated the first half, should have put the game to bed before the break, but their failure to capitalise on chances did give Tottenham hope of a late equaliser. And Postecoglou's men improved significantly in the second half, pushing City deep into their own defensive third. But there was a glaring miss from Pape Matar Sarr in the 98th minute, which summed up what was ultimately a frustrating evening that could be heard on the television, as there weren't quite boos, but certainly what I would call a disgruntled soundtrack from the home fans. Delighted to say that I'm joined by Jules from the Daily Manchester City Podcast. Hello, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Especially good after getting one over on what has usually been a bit of a bogey team over the last decade or so for City. So yeah, it was a good performance by Haaland. Good to see him back in the team, and just about got over the line for a big 3 points.
It's weirdly the game that City at home is the game that I am most confident about, weirdly, in the Premier League calendar, because Tottenham are so unpredictable. But the one thing you can predict is that for whatever reason, Guardiola's just not been able to work Spurs out, particularly at home. But yeah, Spurs disappointing last night, and we'll get into it a little bit later. I think there's elements of players being rested ahead of the Europa League tie, although that is a week away. So 8 days.
Surprised me that did.
Yeah.
The starting lineup.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, just in terms of the story of the game, so Jeremy Doku, absolutely electric down the left, caused all sorts of problems for Spurs. Breakthrough came in the 12th minute when Haaland latched onto a well-placed pass, finishing clinically past Vicario. Haaland really needed that. I mean, Jules, what did you make of the game overall?
Yeah, I think your summarisation was bang on. It felt like a game of two halves. Sorry to use an aged cliche, but City dominated. Could have been 3 or 4 up in the first. I think a lot of that was to do with, like we said, the lineup that you put out. Resting Son, who has been a City killer in his career, probably one of the most feared players in the world from a City perspective, normally does so well. And you rest Bissouma, who's looked really good recently too, and Kulusevski, who's also got a good recent record in general and against Man City. So I think that that allowed City to put the impetus into the game first, control it. Like you said, Doku was electric. Started back-to-back games against big teams. That's a first this season for Doku, and he's been really good in both of them. Obviously, we all know what Doku's about. He'll get the ball. He's going to do his trademark shimmy. He will beat his man, but can he find a City player? In this game, he did, and it proved to be decisive. Haaland looked very dangerous. I'm sure we'll get onto it later, but there was a second goal in injury time just before that chance for Spurs you mentioned. It should have stood, so he should have had 2 goals, but either way, 20 up for the Premier League season for Haaland. Doku looking good, and a very big win for City, trying to claim on to that Champions League position come the end of the season.
Let me just ask you a question about Jeremy Doku, actually, because I think as an outsider, everybody looks at Doku and goes, this guy is everything that football's about. Like blistering pace, tricks, incredibly exciting. And that's what football's about. It's entertainment at the end of the day. And he does that. But I've certainly always got the impression that Pep doesn't like him. I don't think because he dismisses his talent, because you can't do that. But he's not a Pep player. Pep's all about systems and positioning, and everybody knows their job inside out in every situation. Whereas Doku's a wild card kind of footballer and much more unpredictable. And I don't think Pep likes anything that he can't legislate for, because ultimately the system will kind of always win out. Do you think that's maybe turned a corner now and Doku might find himself with a run in the first team?
Very possibly, but I thought that when City beat Nottingham Forest 3-0 and he was the best player, and then he didn't have a good game until the Liverpool game on Sunday. So I think with Pep, he buys players like this, then moulds them. So Raheem Sterling, Riyad Mahrez, you'd say they're of the similar ilk, but he uses that technical ability, then moulds it to create something efficient, is the goal at least. Doku hasn't proved that he's got that efficiency in the locker yet, but he's probably the best at creating opportunities for the chance to create space, which is what Pep definitely wants from his wingers. But hopefully this can be the start of a really good run in the team for him. It seems like Grealish is on his way out. He's had a tough time, some big moments, but it seems like the right decision. Marmoush had just been bought. He looked great. Wasn't too good yesterday, but he looked very dangerous in general. And Savinho's been City's most consistent forward all year. So there's a lot of options in those wide areas. But if Doku plays like this and keeps getting that end product, then yeah, he should and could get a good run in the team.
Do you think this is the idea actually? Because Marmoush is, I guess, he's certainly not an out and out striker, and he appears to be playing a more creative role. Is this kind of another Pep shift, and is this maybe the system that we might see as kind of De Bruyne's powers wane and there's more of a kind of creative onus on Marmoush?
I think Pep's he was reluctant to change for too long after Rodri got injured. Still playing with Kovacic, replacing Rodri's role, and they're obviously two completely different players. Kovacic is so forward-thinking and a bit slow and a bit rash, for all his good qualities too. Ultimately, when you're at the base of a solo pivot for Manchester City and you push so high up the pitch, you need someone that can do that defensive work, and he isn't that guy. So Pep has finally adapted to a double pivot, especially with the signing of Nico Gonzalez. So I think he's just trying to figure it out. And I couldn't tell you anyway, because Pep throws a spanner in the works nearly every week. But B, until Rodri's back, I don't really know what the settled position is going to be. But yeah, there is definitely going to be a changing of the guard at the Etihad over the next 12 to 18 months for sure. And De Bruyne seems to be one of those that might make way, because he's not been fit for about a year at this point. And I think a few knee and ligament injuries have really derailed what has been an illustrious and outstanding career.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Erling Haaland as well. 20 league goals for this season now. I mean, it's one of those weird seasons for City, obviously, because they've been patchy. And I think you kind of assume as an outsider that Haaland's maybe not been on song. And maybe by his crazy standards, it is a slightly quiet season for him. But 20 league goals, should have been 21, which we'll touch on in just a sec. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, I was pleased. I think Haaland's someone that everyone criticizes for not being involved in the game, but we talk about how particular Pep is with his positioning. That's by design. It's absolutely by design. So it's not his fault. He is as good a finisher as they come. And yeah, you could say it's been an off season because his standards have been so ridiculous, but the whole team has been a lot worse than in Haaland's first two seasons, and the service hasn't been there. The consistency in the lineups hasn't been there. Pretty much every forward player has dipped as well, and yet he's still hit 20 goals in the Premier League by February, and he's had injuries too. So when you put it like that, there's only one really forward in the world, or two, that could probably be comparable at this time.
Yeah, and as we said, it should have been 21 goals. We'll talk about exactly why that was and the VAR controversy after this.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bionic, the world's most personalised supplements. Bionic provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right level to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bionic. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now. Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with...
There we go. The advert's so good we heard it twice. I do just have to say, I say it off the back of that advert every time. That's the voice of Ken Davis, who those of you who listen to that Saturday Feeling, the kind of weekly roundup show that we do here at GSPN, might recognise Ken's dulcet tones. Now, he's got a lovely voice. It's not normally as sexy as that. I don't know why he's gone so ASMR. I love it, but it's kind of overwhelming.
Speak for yourself, mate.
Oh, Jules, I don't know about you, mate. I'm like after this show, I'm ordering some Bionique, like just so I've got more of a chance to chat to Ken about it.
Our bodies are unique. You're right.
Yeah, they are. Whoa, cheers, Ken. Thank you. Right. Anyway, sorry, it's really thrown me off. But yeah, so as we mentioned, could have been 21 league goals for Erling Haaland. Goal disallowed in the second half. So roughly what happened? Referee gives a handball on the pitch. VAR reviewed it, and in the absence of overwhelming evidence, they chose not to, or elected not to, as I believe is the letter of the law, overturn the referee's on the field decision. Now, I watched the replays, and I thought it was a handball by Kevin Danso, Spurs centre back. I didn't think it was a handball by Erling Haaland at all. You pointed out probably by Archie Gray as well.
I think it initially touches Archie Gray's hand, and then the ball kind of gets clasped in between Danso's hand and Erling Haaland's big old Norwegian chest. And then it kind of, and you even see it as like sorry, I'm foaming at the mouth because this was such a bad decision. So the decision took 5 minutes of watching the same 2-second clip over and over. So it was a slog watching it on TV. So then after the VAR had looked at all these images, you could see clearly that Danso's hand is what hits the ball as it hits Haaland's chest. And then Haaland finishes with aplomb. Fantastic. But then after the VAR recommends that they should award the goal, the referee decides that he's not going to, and the game just played on as if nothing had happened, as if we hadn't just spent 5 minutes watching the same 2-second clip over and over and over. So I've got that image of Danso's hand and Haaland's chest ingrained in me last night.
Do you know what? I mean, look, we're not the first people to say anything about VAR. Everything's been said, but as the length of the decision-making process, also when you're in the stadium, I've been there in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and you're looking at one of the screens because no one's telling you what's happening.
Yeah.
And obviously, unless you're like the bionic man, you haven't clocked the initial incident because it's professional sport that moves at lightning speed. So you've got no idea what it's been pulled back for. You just know there's a VAR review of a possible handball. You don't know which way that's going or what it's going to mean. Like ultimately, it was kind of an unimportant game actually last night. So it didn't really matter. But if you take 2 minutes and the referee and the VAR are odds, and that's a cup final, for example, then suddenly it's a lot more problematic. Yeah, and I agree. I thought it was a stinker.
I would say that for City, it really was a big game, though. I mean, this is a Spurs team that regularly beats City, and off the back of being outclassed by Liverpool. And it's not often you can say City outclassed throughout the course of a game, never mind a season. And it really felt like Liverpool was a changing of the guard on the weekend. So this was a big game because if City didn't win this game, I think they'd be 7th right now. So it really does matter because the thought of Manchester City not being in the Champions League less than 2 years removed from winning it is unfathomable and unacceptable for the fans and for the club itself. So, and that goal, or non-goal as it were, could have been incredibly important because, as I'm sure you're going to get onto, or maybe we'll touch on it now, Spurs could have scored immediately after, which would have been the 99th minute of the game when it was only meant to be 4 minutes of injury time. So if this could have been the stinker of all stinkers from Man City's perspective.
Do you know what? It's a funny old game because, as you said, cliche alert, but it's true. Game of two halves. It probably could have ended a draw. In the first half, Marmoush and Doku went close. Spurs were significantly improved in the second half. Now, a lot of first-team players left out, something which I'm slightly confused about. But after the break, a little bit renewed energy. So Son, Kulusevski, and Jed Spence all came on. Now, Jed Spence has by far for the past few weeks been Tottenham's best player. And
I'm impressed with him. So impressed with him, how he's adapted to different positions, being like not fancied by anyone at the club and then coming in and being one of your best players during the hardest period under Ange. Sorry to cut you off there, but I really, really rate Jed Spence and his mentality.
This is the thing. He's had an interesting ride because he came to Spurs and Conte was the manager at the time. So he had just been at Forest on loan from Middlesbrough, where he's in the championship team of the season. Forest got promoted. He was fantastic. came to Tottenham, everyone really excited. Pedro Porro wasn't at the club at that point. We didn't have a right back. Antonio Conte didn't fancy him at all. And Antonio Conte said, I'm paraphrasing here, but this was directly from a Spurs journalist. Essentially, he said, why can't Jed Spence get a chance in the team? And Antonio Conte said, are you joking? Because I've seen him train. So now we all know, like, not going to mince words, Conte's a bit of an idiot. that is, don't get me wrong, fantastic football manager, but he's just...
Or are his standards maybe too high?
Yeah, or maybe what he wants from a fullback isn't necessarily what other managers want from a fullback, because now Spence went on loan to Leeds, which had a knee injury, then went off to Genoa in Italy. And as you say, really bounced back. He's been right up there in the last couple of months as our best player. And if he carries on playing like this, it'll be him or Kulusevski for player of the season. Played left back, played right back, played centre back for us as well. And I kind of get, with the only thing Spurs have to play for is the Europa League, that you might want to rest players. Now, the Europa League game isn't until next Thursday, so that's 8 days from the City game. But you just don't want to risk injury or whatever. Like, fine, I understand that. What I don't get is dropping Spence, who's played a lot of football recently, but is nowhere kind of with a full season so far under his belt.
And he's young. He's young as well.
Well, also, if you're playing well, keep playing somebody. He's in good form. Keep playing someone. And Spurs were better in that second half. Brennan Johnson had a low drive that tested Ederson. Son nearly turned a cross in at the far post. And Sarr missed a late header that I would say, kind of classic, ball slightly behind him, starfished up in the air, bounced off his forehead. I would say it should have been a goal. Did you think that was a bit of a let-off?
It just kind of clipped the back of Son's neck, really, didn't it? Do you think that kind of put him off slightly? Because he seemed already in the air by that point, didn't he?
Yeah, potentially. He kind of, when he hit the deck and had his head in his hands, he knew that was a fantastic chance. And I think Postecoglou did as well. Yeah, do you know what? Like, I felt that game could have gone either way. I find myself not that bothered because I'm looking ahead to AZ Alkmaar. And we're going to talk about what's up next for Manchester City in just a second.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out as the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone, AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the description to learn more about Zencastr.
Yep, and we are recording on Zencastr right now. So, Jules, up next for City Plymouth in the FA Cup.
Don't underestimate them.
Yeah, it should. It will obviously.
Are they the linear English champions?
What's the lineal English champions?
No, as in because Liverpool are obviously champions elect, and Plymouth saw off them in the last round, didn't they? So I was just being facetious.
Yes, okay. There's this thing, isn't there? Because there was this thing of like the lineal World Cup winners, and for a while I think it was Côte d'Ivoire, because having beaten recent World Cup winners by that metric, kind of like boxing, it's like you get the belt if you beat the champ. So
it doesn't matter, but it's something nice to talk about sometimes.
I love that. Obviously, kind of a good run in the cup. Well, not a good run in the cup. City aren't that kind of club. Getting to Wembley and winning the trophy would kind of be a redeeming factor in what's been a disappointing season for City, wouldn't it?
We've spoken a lot about this on our podcast, and the FA Cup has to be won. It's a pretty much non-negotiable at this point. With Arsenal out, Liverpool out, it has to be done. And City have a really good recent record in every competition under Pep, really. But the FA Cup as well, got to the last two finals, both against United, 1 win, 1 loss. We don't need to lament on the loss too much. But I think City need to win, and at home against Plymouth Argyle. Yes, I know they just beat Liverpool and I was having a bit of fun there, but it should be a comfortable win and through to the quarterfinals, and then there's only 3 more games. So this is the only silverware City can win this year. So the FA Cup has never been more important to Pep Guardiola.
Yeah, and AZ Alkmaar up next for Spurs, Europa League knockout stages. Ange Postecoglou promised he wins a trophy in his second season. He really managed to shrewdly narrow that down by getting Spurs knocked out of both the League Cup and the FA Cup within 4 days. So well done, Ange, to be fair. Nice to kind of secure
You
a
had
bit
a
of
good
rest.
crack. Well, I mean, the first leg you had a good crack in the League Cup. Second leg was a bit not that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what, and you talked about kind of Liverpool sort of completely dominating Man City. It was the same for Spurs. It was a real, you get those games that are pretty humbling as a football fan, where Mo Salah managed to run an entire football match while walking, and it was pretty disappointing.
That exact word has given a lot of City fans PTSD this season, I think.
Yeah, and I do. Yeah, I've got slightly. I think. Yeah, I've got PTSD myself just from that Liverpool game. But AZ Alkmaar next. Obviously, Europa League is kind of the basket in which all Tottenham eggs are in. I might ask everybody this when we do crossover pods. What is your opinion, and you think kind of the City pod's opinion or City fans' opinion of Ange Postecoglou? Because the Spurs fan base is pretty mixed. I'm always interested what kind of outsiders think.
Well, I can only speak for myself, I guess, but my take on him is that I think he's a very, very good coach. I respect him as a man. I do think how affable he is kind of got him off a bit scot-free because he was a miserable so-and-so for a couple of months. I understand why, but also like he was rude in nearly every interview for about 2 months, and my opinion of likability of him kind of shifted then. But I do like him as a coach, and I think when things are going good, it's as good as anything you can speak more to this than me, I'm sure, but anything Spurs have had in the last decade or so, really, when it's going well. The football is fantastic. But what I think not a lot of people have taken into account in terms of whether he should have gone or stayed is how young the squad is. Even your most experienced players like Romero are still only 26.
Yeah.
No one wins anything with a team of that age profile. And all of these young players are coming through, and most of them are improving. The strike rate is pretty high, I'd say. So some money's been spent. Of course, Spurs could always get backed more, considering the amount of money that you make with the stadium and commercial activities. But I feel Andrew's been a bit hard done by, brought a bit on himself as well. But ultimately, I think he at least deserves a chance to see whether he can win a cup in his second season, like he stated.
Yeah, do you know what? I think, my opinion, broadly speaking, is he's got 3 months to prove himself. Good end to the season. Like he says, a lot of young players. Mateus Tell's come in. Obviously, we got Spence playing really well. Udogi's coming back. Danso's new into the team. Gray and Bergvall are two kind of first team mainstays a lot of the time. They're both teenagers. And if there's kind of the green shoots of improvement, and to be honest, a win in the Europa League, which at some point would mean getting past Bilbao or Lazio, which are both very difficult games, then who knows? But the spectre...
It's Europa League or bust then, basically.
Exactly, yeah. But the spectre of Andone Iraola kind of looms over Ange Postecoglou at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
is that the talk?
He's the guy who all Spurs fans talk about. I have pointed out he might have significantly better offers in the summer, so that wouldn't be a done deal because he might not want to come to Tottenham. He's probably having quite a nice time in Bournemouth. But what's just before we finish up, Jules? What's the rest of the City? What's the rest of the season hold for City? What's the aim now?
Like I said, the FA Cup is imperative because a season without silverware, with this wage bill, this amount of talent in the squad, coming to the end of Pep Guardiola's club career, you don't want to waste any years of the great man's final years. But top 4 and the FA Cup is minimum requirement. Finishing outside the top 4 is disaster. I think it'll be 5. The top 5 should qualify for Champions League based on the coefficient this year. So 5th could even be like a lucky escape. But anything lower than that, non-Champions League football would be embarrassing and a complete failure, to be quite honest. Regardless of injuries, there's enough quality and enough money being spent on the squad. January was 150 million too. They were one of the only teams that really spent in January. So there's that input as well to consider. So the rest of the season, we're not expecting any trees to be pulled up. but expecting silverware to be won and enough consistency maintained to get over the line and finish in the top 4, possibly 5, whatever it takes.
Fantastic. Jules, thank you so much for joining us, mate.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And don't forget, if you are interested in all things Manchester City, do check out the Daily Man City podcast. And if you're a Premier League football fan or you just want to know about other clubs, we do have a podcast for everyone. If you're a Spurs fan, of course, which I imagine is why you found yourself clicking on this often somber podcast, but slightly more hopeful now, then do give us a listen. We'll be back tomorrow, and it's at GSPN Tottenham on all social media. Plus, don't forget to rate and review us on your podcast app of choice. It really does help, and I often find just click on the 5 stars. It's easier. Right, come on, you Spurs. We'll see you next time.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.